This is the answer key for homework number 7, FIN499, Spring 2019. Task number 1 gives us an income statement and a balance sheet and asks us to complete the income statement, in particular the interest expense, and then to look at the balance sheet to see if the balance sheet balances, and if not, whether or not we need additional financing. So the first thing to do is to calculate our interest expense. So the interest expense is 8% of our long-term debt, and the long-term debt is $120,000, and 8% of any new financing. The assumption is new financing will be raised from long-term debt, and so any new financing that we raise down here in cell C55 will also pay 8% interest on that. So right now it's only showing the interest expense on the long-term debt. We have no additional financing yet, and so we don't see a number there. All right, let's calculate the additional financing. It's simply assets minus liabilities and equity. And we can see here that the assets are larger. We have $1.576 million in assets and only $1.4 million in financing. So we need more financing to get this balance sheet to balance. Unfortunately, we have a circular reference here. As soon as I entered the equation, we see down here at the bottom left-hand corner, Excel is telling this a circular reference. The problem is this. We can't calculate the interest expense until we know the amount of additional financing. But we can't calculate the additional financing until we know the interest expense paid. And so we have the circular reference. There is a way to solve it, however. All we need to do is go up to File, Options, and Formulas. On the right-hand side, we have a box for iterative calculations. This is our key to solving circular references. When I click the button, it's going to try 100 different times to put in different numbers for the additional financing needed until it finds one that forces the balance sheet to balance. So we'll go ahead and click OK, and it'll only take a fraction of a second here. So we'll go ahead and click this OK. Excel has calculated how much additional financing we needed, $180,000, and now look, our balance sheet balances. The total assets are exactly equal to our financing, and our financing here is liabilities and equity plus the new financing, the additional financing needed. And so we have a balance sheet that balances. Now our total financing available after we raise this new financing is equal to the amount of assets that we need to finance. Indicated here that we should turn off iterative calculations when we're done, so we'll go ahead and do that. We have our calculation. We can turn it off and it will keep that calculation for us. So we'll disable iterative calculations, and our spreadsheet still works fine. This concludes task 1. In task 2, we're going to use goal seek. It says the yield to maturity for a bond is defined as the discount rate that forces the present value of the interest and principal to be equal to the market price of the bond. Excel has a built-in yield function that we could use for this calculation, but we're going to use goal seek and get to the same answer. So it says use goal seek to find the discount rate that forces the bond value, this is our calculated value down here at green, to be equal to the market price of the bond. And so clearly the 6% discount rate doesn't do it. If I change it to 7%, now the bond value is even farther away. So we know it's somewhere lower. We could just keep trying values until we force these two numbers to be equal, but we'll use goal seek instead. So let's go ahead and try goal seek. We'll click on Data, What If Analysis, and Goal Seek. We want to set the bond value equal to the market price, 1,000. We can't use a cell reference in goal seek, so we'll have to type in the market price of the bond. And how are we going to change it? We're going to change the discount rate. So we're going to try different discount rates until the green box, the bond value, is $1,100. So we'll go ahead and click OK. We'll see Excel try a few values quickly, and then it will converge to a solution. It's found a solution for us. If we discount the cash flows at 4.73%, then the value of the bond, that is the present value of its cash flows, is exactly equal to the market price of the bond. So we've used GoalSeek to solve for the yield to maturity of 4.73%. This concludes task number 2. In task number 3, we're going to use Solver to solve for an optimization problem. Let's read the problem. It says, a local bike shop wants to determine the number of each type of bike to order in order to maximize its total profits. Cell F27. So let's click on cell F27. We have the profit from each type of bike, each type of bike, and then we add them together here to get the total. So how do we get that total? It says here we're going to use the sum product function. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the sum product, that is, I'm going to take the selling price of each bike and multiply that by the quantity of each bike. So it's going to do the products, that is, multiply those things together. It's going to multiply the road price times the road quantity, mountain price times mountain quantity, etc., and add those together. Right now the number is going to be 0. We'll do the same. If I make these absolute cell references, I can copy this formula down. Let's do that. So now we've locked in the cell reference for the quantity. So now we have the cost of each type of bike times the quantity of each type of bike. That'll give us our total cost. And here we have the quantity of each, the profit on each bike times the quantity on each bike. And that will give us our total profit across all the bikes. Okay. The order quantities are unknown. We don't know how many to order. That's what Solver is going to solve for us. We also have a constraint. It says order quantities must be integers. Let's go ahead and build this into Solver here. So we'll click on Data and Solver. If you do not see Solver, it means you need to install the Analysis Tool Pack. Let's see how to do that. We'll click File, Options, Add-ins, Go, and just make sure the Analysis Tool Pack is checked and that Solver is checked. Okay, let's go ahead and set this up in Solver. We'll click on Data, Solver, and here's our Solver parameter box. What is our objective? Our objective is to maximize the total profits in cell F27. So we'll say, let's set F27 to its maximum value. How are we going to do that? We're going to do it by changing the quantity of each bike that we order. We also have constraints. The first constraint is that all the quantities must be integers. Our first constraint is that the order quantities must be integers. So we'll add a constraint. We'll set the quantities equal to integers. Our second constraint is that our total purchases must be less than $60,000. That's the amount of money we have. So the total purchases is, the total purchases are down here in cell F26. So let's add a constraint. We'll say this number must be less than or equal to $60,000. So we have our second constraint in place. The third constraint, it says the firm cannot sell more than 10 cruiser bikes in a year, so it should not order more than this. So let's add a constraint for that. Here's the number of cruiser bikes, and that must be less than or equal to 10. Finally, we have our last constraint. It says the firm expects to sell at least 8 of each type of bike. So this is the minimum order quantity. So we'll add a constraint. We'll set those quantities greater than or equal to 8. So now we have our objective function to maximize the total profit, maximize it. We do it by changing the quantities, and then those quantities must be integers. Let's see. Quantities must be greater than or equal to 8 for the last constraint. The cruiser bikes must be less than or equal to 10. And finally, the total amount of money we spend on bikes must be less than $60,000. Okay, let's go ahead and try to solve this. We'll see if using the default solving method works. Hopefully it will. If not, we'll come back and try to fix it. So we'll go ahead and click solve and see if Excel is able to come to an answer. It did. So it said it found an integer solution within our tolerances and all of our constraints are satisfied. The default here is keep the solution, which we'll do. So if we order 8 road bikes, 61 mountain bikes, 10 cruisers, and 8 electric bikes, our total cost is $59,900. That's less than our constraint of $60,000. And our profit is $60,600. No other quantity of bikes will exceed the profit we see here. This concludes task number 3 and homework number 7.